hear me?
Good evening.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Vanessa.
Can you all hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Kind of
You're a little
muted.
muffled, a little quiet.
Please.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening.
Hey, Peter.
As you can see, I'm in the council chambers. I don't have a flag of the town in my living room. I should, but I don't.
We can make arrangements for that.
Thank you. Okay, I haven't heard anything. Oh, there's Ben. Oh. Oh, Tony. Ben just sent a message, so he's gonna need to restart, so he'll.
There's something wrong with this computer. Yeah, the speakers aren't working.
We can hear you.
Yeah, it's I can't hear you. So
Okay.
now I can.
Okay. And has anyone heard from, I have not, but has anyone heard from Al?
Not directly. He was at our last meeting though, but he came in late.
Right. Well, Ben's got to reconnect, so we'll wait another couple minutes before we start to give Al a second. Oh. And Charlie's here in person.
Am I able to be heard at this point?
We can hear you, Charmaine. Is that what you asked?
Yes. Okay.
So we're waiting for. We got everyone except the other two members.
You know what? I think I am going to sign off now and join you in person so that I don't have to run out between this meeting and the next.
Okay.
So I'll be in a couple of minutes.
Okay. Hello, Ben. It's like to wait. I haven't heard anything from Al. I'll just Wait 1 or 2 more minutes just in case he's able to join us.
I think
like
we're still in the
tax
L
season.
time crunch.
Oh, yeah, tax season, of course. All right, then if everyone's ready, why don't we begin at 6:06? And we'll call the meeting to order. Present are Ben Shaken and myself. And then from the committee. Okay, do we have anyone for public comment?
I don't have anything that came into my inbox. I would
Okay,
defer to the town manager's office.
okay. There is someone in the council chambers, but not for that not for testifying. Okay, all right, then we'll go staff reports.
I do not have a staff report.
Oh, the audit update? Or do you want? That's what's listed.
Oh, okay. So,
Or is that what you want Vanessa to? No,
no, Tasha sent out, I just want to make sure we're looking at the correct agenda. The link that was sent out on Friday was pointing to the previous month's agenda. She sent out a corrected link. So I'm not sure if you're looking at the corrected link for the agenda items today.
I think so, but.
I think the
okay.
correct agenda does still say audit update under staff
Yeah.
report, so it's probably just there. in
Yeah.
error.
Okay.
All right, but if we're not ready, we'll put that off then, or,
Vanessa is going to not only give us an update, but close us out. So,
well, that sounds like the best of both worlds. Okay. Any other anything else on staff reports?
Nope.
Okay, then approval of the March 14th minutes,
Move to approve.
and I second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So 2 approved. And now we go to a presentation by Vanessa Rosito. Thank you very much. It's good to see you again, Vanessa.
Nice to see you too, Peter. Nice to see everyone else. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. Is it okay if I share my screen? Do I have the ability to do that?
yes, I just gave it to you.
Okay. Great. This one. Here. Bear with me.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, how's that? You can see that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Although the dates are inconsistent.
I think on the agenda, it says June 30th, 2020 audit presentation. Oh, and March 22nd. Yeah, I didn't change that. Sorry about that.
That's all right. That's all right. So, but that's okay. Just want to make sure we have the right PowerPoint.
It's the right PowerPoint. I'll change it if you need the slides.
Okay.
All right. So I just did this PowerPoint to sort of summarize all of the deliverables rather than flipping page by page. I just thought it was a good way to summarize everything. So as far as the agenda tonight, I'll talk about the terms of the engagement. I'll go over some high-level financial highlights of the ACFR and also the federal and state single audit. I'll talk about the internal control over financial reporting report. I think in your packet, you have the governance communication. So I'm just going to summarize that for you. And then the last 2 slides of the presentation are the upcoming GASB pronouncements. And my dog is breakdancing in the back. So if there's any noise, that's her. So sorry. So as far as terms of the engagement, we were engaged to express opinions on whether the basic financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We express an in relation to opinion on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards and the schedule of expenditures of state financial assistance, which are the federal and state single audits. An opinion on compliance for those single audits related to the major federal and state programs tested. A report on internal control over financial reporting which is separate from the single audits. It's really your financial controls. And then lastly, the internal control over those major programs in the federal and state single audit. So as far as the results, we have issued an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements. It's the best opinion that you can receive. It basically means that everything is fairly stated in accordance with our accounting standards. We do have another or a newer paragraph in the opinion because we did implement GASB 84, which is the fiduciary activity standard. So I'll talk about that in more detail at a later slide. And as far as the internal control report, we did not have any findings over controls on the financial systems. We issued a clean
If I
opinion
could just
on,
ask,
Go ahead.
as I recall, one quick question. So no findings means no problems. Other than, so in other words, it was clean.
that's right. That's
Okay.
right. We didn't find any gaps, if you will, in internal controls.
Thank you.
Okay. Just to summarize the federal single audit, we also issued a clean opinion on the major federal program tested and no compliance findings or significant deficiencies in internal control over that program. For the state single audit, same thing, clean opinion on the major state programs tested and no compliance findings or significant deficiencies in internal control over those programs.
Vanessa, does that include ARPA, I mean, the COVID-19 related? Program?
So there were some COVID monies spent in the federal single audit, but we did not test them, and the town did not spend the ARPA grant because I think you probably received it the last week in June. So we didn't have any expenditures for that. So just as promised, some high-level financial highlights. So this is showing, this table is actually in your financial statements. It's in the management's discussion and analysis. I excerpted it from there. So there's two sections, really, the governmental activities, which are the governmental funds of the town, and then the business type activities, which are the sewer and waste funds of the town. So just focusing on the governmental activities, looking from 2020 to 2021, and the heading does say as restated, and that is, it was restated because of GASB 84. So it's not, this is a normal thing. When we have a new standard, we have to restate the prior year. So just looking from 2020 to 2021, total assets did decrease a little bit from 133 million to about 129 million. Actually, I'm going to move over to business type activities. Those assets increased significantly from about 2.5 million to 14.8 million. So sort of the story with this is because of the sewer project, where the expenditures were in the governmental activities at the end of 2021. That asset, if you will, was contributed to business type activities. So that is a little bit of the reason why governmental activities assets decrease and business type activities increase so much. As far as long-term liabilities, really no significant changes from last year to this year. And I think the other reason why business type activities assets increases because you do have the assessment receivable for that sewer project too. So that's about a little bit over $3 million. As far as net position from last year to this year, governmental activities was 104 million last year, and this year is about 95 million. So a little bit of a decrease, and then business type activities increased significantly because of that sewer project. Okay, and this slide is presenting the major funds of the town in the first 4 columns. So general fund, Mansfield discretionary fund, capital non-recurring fund, and then capital projects. And then the smaller funds, if you will, are aggregated together into this 5th column, non-major governmental funds. So just looking towards the bottom of the slide, general fund increased fund balance of about 629,000 from the previous year, ending the year with fund balance of 8.473797. Mansfield discretionary fund, just a small increase to fund balance of 53,000. Capital non-recurring fund had a decrease of 112,000. Capital projects had a decrease of 1.754, and I think that's really because of the wrap up of the sewer project. And then non-major governmental funds had an increase of about 481,000 from the previous year. So in total, the total governmental funds fund balance decreased slightly from 14.377 million to 13.673 million. And then just some other financial highlights for the general fund. Total fund balance is $8.5 million. Of that amount, there's 3 buckets that it's in really. So in the committed bucket, you have $191,510. That's made up of committed for compensated absences of 25,000 and transit services of 166,000. Then really the entire assigned category is assigned to encumbrances of 98,000, leaving unassigned fund balance of 8.18 million for the general fund. This is sort of outlining the restatement for GASB 84 fiduciary activity. So this statement redefined what a fiduciary activity is, and it did away with the agency fund category, and it brought in a new type of fund, the custodial fund. So what we had to do is look at all of Mansfield's agency funds and really just reclassify them according to this new standard. So I'll just go through these. The performance bonds is now reported in the general fund as just an asset and a liability. There were a number of funds that were reclassified to special revenue funds. So student activity funds, sewer funds, the athletic fund, Connecticut Lineage LLC, dependent care, uninsured medical costs, and lastly, Mansfield Downtown Partnership. So all of those are now special revenue funds, sort of in the back of the financial statements in those smaller funds that I talked about before. And you did have one new custodial fund, so that's the Mid-NAROC operating fund.
Vanessa, could you just very briefly talk about what is the significance of this change in the fiduciary responsibility or rule?
I wouldn't really say it's significant. I think before, when you had an agency fund, you just reported an asset, which was 9 times out of 10 cash, and then the liability was due to other agencies, like student activity funds was due to students. But really, when you dig into the activity, the town really does have administrative power over these activities. The students really can't unilaterally decide how to spend these monies. They can't unilaterally decide how to raise funds.
Right.
The real story is that there is management involvement. So there are teachers involved and principals involved. in managing these funds. So it really is a fund of the town. So that's why all of these agency funds were repurposed to special revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Just some more financial highlights. Property tax collections this year were 98.78%. Last year, they were 98.53%. So a small increase from the prior year. As far as the general fund budget, revenues did come in a little bit less than budget, $100,282, but I think the town did a good job of also keeping expenditures under budget of $702,465. And then the town is in the state of Connecticut and municipal employee retirement system fund. So you did have an increase to this liability of 1.7 million. And that is really because the measurement of this liability is 1 year in arrears. So we're really looking at market conditions in 2020 and not market conditions in fiscal 21. So I would bet that you're going to see a decrease to this liability for the next fiscal year, because I'm sure that the pension liability went down because of the increase in the market value of the investments. Because your OPEB liability did decrease 472,000, which is in line with, you know, the market conditions, and every other municipality that really had any kind of investments last year, they saw an increase to those and a decrease in all of their pension and OPEB liabilities. Just some more details on the federal single audit. You spent $1.78 million of federal awards. We did test one program, which was the child nutrition program. Again, we did not have any findings, and we issued a clean opinion on the compliance of this program. And then for the state single audit, the town spent a little bit over $20 million in state awards. We tested 3 programs: reimbursement for tax loss on state-owned property, municipal open space, and then you had a bridge grant for the Hillendale, I'm not sure how you say that correctly,
That's right.
road bridge. Again, clean opinion on major program compliance for these 3 programs and no compliance findings. And then just summarizing the required auditor's communication, we are required to communicate certain things to governance, which is this committee. So as I mentioned before, we issued, we implemented GASB 84 this year. We are required to look at the estimates in your financial statements a little bit more carefully, because since they are estimates, they're subject to management bias. Management could inflate or deflate an estimate because they might want to manage earnings. So these estimates are listed here. So we have to look at them to make sure that they're reasonable. So useful lives of capital assets are used to calculate depreciation expense. The allowance for uncollectible receivables, management looks at the history of the write-offs for that. You utilize an actuary to calculate the OPEB liability based upon various assumptions that you agree to in consultation with that actuary. You also consult with a third party for the claims incurred but not reported for medical claims, kind of like the run out after year end. And then lastly, the estimate to supervise, if you will, I guess, the landfill closure over the 30 years. And then we did not have any disagreements with management. Management did not consult with other accountants for a second opinion on any standard or way that something was recorded. We didn't have any difficulties in performing the audit. There were no uncorrected misstatements, and we are independent of the town. And then lastly, these two slides are the list, the laundry list of new standards that the GASB has written. So there's two biggies, one for this year and one for next year. So statement 87, and I know for those of you that were here last year or the year before, you've heard me speak about this. This is the lease standard that even the commercial world is going through, whereby any operating leases that the town has need to be capitalized, I guess, for lack of a better term, onto the balance sheet as an asset and a liability. So this includes also any rental income that the town is receiving. So any rent expense or rental income. So finance department needs to inventory all of these sort of arrangements, and we will, you know, have a meeting to talk about the best way to implement this standard, whether you're going to do it in-house, whether you're going to contract out with someone else to do it. So it's obviously, it's probably a lot more work than everybody thinks, unfortunately, like everything. So we need to start talking about it soon.
And is that, or I guess it's a question for Charmaine, how much work will this be for Uptown and Mansfield for you guys?
I'm expecting some significant work. Vanessa will likely have been kind of own this because she's already involved with a lot of the other things as it relates to the lease agreement. Because this includes like the technology pieces that we have lease agreements for across the town and the boards of ed, correct?
So if you're talking about software, Charmaine, that's the,
No,
okay.
I'm not. I'm talking about actual hardware.
Yes, you're right then. Yes.
Right. So she's already in the know on that stuff. And also the rental agreements that we have with R19 regarding the Depot campus. Yeah, it's going to be some work. So.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So as far as the other standards, I don't really think anything is going to affect you. And then I kind of alluded to the next standard, which is statement 96, which is the exact same, I guess, skeleton, if you will, as the lease standard, but it's for software agreements, software subscription agreements. So I think that this standard is going to be a lot more work and, you know, investigation with your IT people, and probably a lot more agreements than the lease standard. So this needs to be implemented 6/30/2023. So I'm telling my clients, you know, it might be a good idea while you're looking at your leases to also start the process to look at this too. We do have to make sure that the list is complete. So we have advised our clients to sort of work with the AP person and look for those recurring monthly or quarterly payments to kind of make sure that we have the population under control.
What's the purpose of this change? What's the, you know, the public purpose or the reason why this was changed under GSAB?
Besides to keep GASB relevant, I
Okay.
think to just, you know, I think they're trying to capture all of the commitments, if you will, of the municipalities, because even though this is a you know, a rental arrangement, I think they want to compare apples to apples. And if you have a 3-year rental agreement, they kind of want to see what the future commitment is, in addition to capturing the assets that relate to that.
Okay, thank you.
And that is all I have. So if you have more questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and I'll stop sharing.
Any questions, anyone? We start with Ben, if Al's not on yet. Okay. So just wanted to, I mean, this looks very good. I think this is accurate to say it's as clean as it could be.
Yes, I mean, as we all know, the only issue was that we were late in issuing. So we issued the proper extensions with OPM, and we've uploaded the reports there. So I think, we just need to make sure that we're timely for next year. That was the only issue.
And for that, I'm sorry, were those the ARPA funds, the COVID relief funds, or by late uploading the reports, you mean? Which ones were these?
No, I'm saying that we issued the audit late because it was due in December, right?
Right.
So
okay.
I'm saying that's
Right.
the only kind of negative thing, is that it was issued late. So, and I think everybody is behind because of these COVID funds. And I know Mansfield had new systems, and I think Charmaine's still going to classes for them, right? So I think just have to make sure that, as best you can, just plan to get the audit out on time next year.
Okay. In terms of the new systems, I know it's been a real thing. Do you have any, you may not have had a chance to see yet, it may not be your area, but do you have a view as to whether the new financial programs we're using will ultimately prove, worth the time and great stress for Charmaine and others?
I don't know that I know enough about it, Peter, to comment on that.
Okay. Is this a common program for other municipalities to use? Do you know, in your experience?
Vanessa, it's Munis. We're moving to Munis.
So yes, I would say that the lion's share of the Connecticut municipalities use Munis.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Vanessa. This is very, very helpful, and it's obviously good news.
Yes,
So,
yes.
So thank you. And this also just shows, I think, there's a lot of credit for this to Charmaine and her staff and Ryan. So thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Take
Thank you.
care.
Vanessa.
Just one
Thank you.
comment. This wasn't in the packet for approval by the council, but it should be in the packet for our approval at our next meeting.
Yes.
Good.
So can I move to recommend the council approve the audit?
Good idea. I'll second. And all in favor? Aye. So great. Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Good pickup. Okay, and then the next item of new business is proposed additional appropriations for fiscal year 2021, 2022.
Correct.
And I think the big
So-
question is here is why does this have to be done now and not as part of the budget process a little bit later?
Go ahead, Charmaine.
Well, the reason why I had asked that this get done now is honestly, this is part of the natural schedule that the town has been on when it comes to things like this in the past. However, it just kind of muddies the conversations. For example, I think Ben spoke about the fund balance and just trying to keep everything straight. The budget was written, as far as that fund balance is concerned, with the expectation that there would be the respective dollars dropping to the fund balance after this respected appropriation of this money. So number one. Number two, these items that are on the list that we're asking to be appropriated kind of came to the surface as a result of the budget development process, where the respective department heads indicated what they thought could be done this fiscal year versus next fiscal year to alleviate the pressure on the FY 22-23 budget. And then lastly, the things that finance is asking for within that pilot appropriation request is, it's now known to us. For example, the shortfall of the capital non-recurring fund, the proceeds that come from the ambulance fund go into that fund, the ambulance services go into that fund,
The
And
capital,
so-
the capital,
non-recurring.
right, okay.
And so therefore, we're not receiving the funds as expected. Captain is going to be looking at alternative, the fire chief, excuse me, is going to be looking at alternative service providers because he's feeling that we're not getting what we should be getting from this provider. And so, it became evident to us that we're going to have a shortfall because we're not getting what was originally projected and budgeted. So we are just, determining this as we go through mid-year to 3/4 of the year. So again, the goal is to have this free and clear, so we're not sort of mixing fiscal years between this appropriation, ARPA funds, and fiscal year 22-23. It's kind of hard to keep things straight in all conversations. So my goal was to try and get us to a point where we were operating like we would have in any other environment, where the current fiscal year was set. And we were springing off of the current fiscal year's budget into the next fiscal year from a budget development standpoint. That's what the goal was.
Okay, so one question, so all of these, so I'm looking at page 192, is that the best to look at the
Are you looking at the list of under financial impact? The copy I have is it's like 17 items. Is that what you're looking at?
yes, with the last item, premium pay to EES, is that the one?
Yes.
Okay, so none of this is in the current budget proposal.
Right. So I'll pick up where Charmaine left off. So a number of these items, perhaps the lion's share of these items would be a better way of putting it. If we weren't proposing that the quote unquote surplus pilot funds from the current fiscal year, 21-22, if we didn't have those to utilize, these would be, in all likelihood, part of the FY 22-23 capital request. So basically what would be being requested in the next year's budget, which obviously has been presented, would be appreciably higher as a result of these items kind of getting packed in there. We had a unusual year in that we set a tax rate based on a more conservative assumption about what the actual state revenues would be, the pilot funds, and then obviously we received, about $4 million more in pilot funds than we budgeted for. And so rather than have just a really large sum of state aid just become part of the general fund balance, we thought, well, hold on a second, we could actually pull a number of the items off of the capital plan for 22-23 and obligate these funds this year, still building fund balance, still building our overall percentage of fund balance by a pretty healthy amount, but kind of even things out, I guess, a little bit.
Okay, so the item 16, the capital non-reoccurring fund contribution of 1.1 million, is that all because of reduction of ambulance fees? That seems high.
So it's a combination of the reduction in ambulance fees and the 5-year capital plan. So there's in the budget, in the town manager's budget, there's a 5-year capital plan. We do a roll forward or a pro forma for that and determine what each year after the next fiscal year that we're budgeting for, the requirements of the transfer from the general fund in order to support those respective projects.
Right.
And so if we wait until we get to that point, then the burden on the general fund to do the transfer to cover those capital projects is going to be substantially higher than what they are presented in the budget book that you all received.
Can I ask a question?
I think
Granted,
Mr. Shakin.
the money is going to go into CNR for expenditure in 22-23 on capital projects. What capital projects do you have in mind for that money?
Well, it just becomes part of the overall fund balance from which we would draw in part on for this year's whole suite of capital projects, of which there are things like $5.6 million worth of projects.
Right, so for example, if we decided that we were going to move the repair of Hunting Lodge Road into this year, we could use that money for that?
Right, so the Hunting Lodge Road, okay, wait, sorry, the repair, if you're talking about the culvert.
Yes,
Yeah, I guess there are a couple ways to tackle that particular project. I know that that's come up. You know, one option would be potentially, I'm gonna present these as options, not advocating for anything, but that project, which obviously wasn't contemplated or known when this list that's in this packet was being formulated, you know, one option would be basically to add that project to this list and just further, you know, basically charge that much more, if you want to call it that, against our surplus pilot funds. And in which case, it could be obligated this year, as opposed to rolling it in to next year. Because basically these funds, as Charmaine said, the 1.1 million going into CNR, the budget you've already seen with the projects that have already been presented, it's, like, for lack of a better term, banking on the availability of those funds for the projects that were already planned. So if you added additional projects like Hunting Lodge Road, it would kind of put a strain on things, but I think Ben has a
So
question.
can I ask, so it's sort of a two-part question.
Number 17.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So I guess part one is when I look at the sort of breakdown on the following page after the motions, I don't have any issue with any of the proposed transfers. I don't have any issue with the CNR contribution. What I'm looking at is there's 1.6 million left that we are proposing to roll into fund balance. And so I guess my question is, if the council, through its budget process, wanted to fund additional things, understanding that the current year surplus is not won't compound into next year, so we would need to identify one-time expenses to use it on, that with the only consequence of us doing that be that we would deposit less than $1.6 million into fund balance. And if we decided we wanted this project to happen next year, is it sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other? If we deposited 1.6 million into fund balance tonight, and then in 2 weeks passed a budget that withdrew $500,000 from fund balance to fund a project, like, is there any difference besides technical in how that might work?
So I'll try to, yeah, I understand your question. I'll try to, so the funds, the roughly 6 million that you're referencing, that won't become fund balance tonight. That we're sort of projecting that's what would be the contribution, just based on the excess pilot. That's what we would project to be contribution to fund balance at the end of the year. So basically nothing changes until you get to the end of the year. But so one option is, if option A, let's assume that the council really wanted to do $500,000 worth of more road work or drainage repairs, just to use an example. So option A might be, if there's a list of 17 things here on this list, you add an 18th thing that's related to that for 500,000 more, in which case then the projected contribution to fund balance becomes more like 1 million or 1.1 million. Or you could increase the contribution to CNR from 1.1 million to 1.6 million, further front loading CNR that 500,000. And then you put the project or projects that you're thinking of in next year's, you're adding it to next year's, the 22-23 capital budget. So it's basically two roads leading to the same thing in terms of the project getting funded in the short term. It's just one, you're obligating the funds in the current fiscal year, and the other, you're adding it to the capital plan for next year.
So can I ask us then, I understand that, I think. And so can I ask then like a process question, which is, in 2 weeks, probably Monday, the 25th, and if we need it, Wednesday, the 27th, the council is going to have received the sort of breadth of your budget proposal and will then adopt a budget that amends your proposal in one way or another. And to my mind, it makes more sense to, as we sort of think about what the needs are that may not be captured in your budget, and I think we've identified a few already that members of the council might be interested in sort of trying to fund over and above what you've proposed, that it makes sense to do this sort of at the same time. So let's continue to use this culvert project as an example, although I'm not actually thinking of that project when I say what I just said. That's not in your budget, understandably, right? Like that just happened. We didn't anticipate it. It's not in the capital plan for the town. It's just, it's something that came up. It's not in this proposal either. And so in 2 weeks, we could say, we want to do this, but we don't want to cut your mill rate decrease proposal in half. And so, oh, let's use the surplus dollars from the current year to fund it. And so to me, they're all together. Like we have needs that we need to meet by the end of June next year. And while the fiscal year, well, the budget we adopt will start on July 1st, and this starts today, it makes sense to me to consider them all together. So to have the council pass a budget in 2 weeks and also pass a plan for using the current year surplus. And so I guess my question is there any reason why we should not do that and do these things tonight outside of the budget process and then in 2 weeks do a budget? I think they're really connected. And so I'm just wondering if there's a reason to do it differently.
So if you appropriate, if you do this tonight, then the budget documents that you have for fiscal year 22-23 are based off of these changes. Okay, we built the budget. Okay, so as long as council members understand that, that's what the expectation was, that would be the end of the fiscal year 2022. Now, whether you choose these 17 projects or not, the expectation was $2.4 million was going to be appropriated in some capacity for this fiscal year, and the balance would fall to fund balance. So as long as that's seated in everyone's mind that this is how that budget was built for fiscal year 22-23, because everything is a stair step. Then if that's the pleasure of the committee and council, then that's what we do.
Yeah, I guess
My concern is that everybody's not going to be not everybody's going to be able to follow. That's what my concern is.
Oh, sorry, so I
when
mean, everyone's not going to be able to what? Find?
follow the thinking that this is already baked into Ryan's budget. And so it might be a little difficult, but if you all feel otherwise, then.
Well, to me, I guess,
problem.
to my mind, then Peter, I mean, the projects listed in 1 through 17, I don't have any issue doing any of them. I think that my concern is around the 1.6 million that's then left over. And if the council identifies things, we had a long conversation during the last council meeting about accelerating the progress of road paving, just as an example.
Right.
And this is a source of dollars, understanding that if we pull from it, we then deposit less into fund balance at the end of the fiscal year, and that affects the 17% that Ryan has projected our fund balance to be, because that projection assumes these dollars don't get swept out before, that we deposit them at the end of the fiscal year. But to me, it's more confusing to do some of it tonight and then in 2 weeks do some other parts of it. It would be easier for me to comprehend, considering everything all together as a whole, and having counselors who want to make changes to the budget know that that this money is available in the current year, and they can ask management, as always, to run scenarios for whatever the changes are that they're considering and get the full picture of the impact.
the fund balance is less of a concern for me, because remember, the fund balance is a snapshot at any given point. That number is going to fluctuate due to interest rates and everything else. And whatever the budget is at the time in which that snapshot is taken. It's that the fund balance, that's not necessarily my concern. It's about year over year, when people are looking at the budget and seeing that, making sure they're clear on the year over year change. And it is a substantial increase as a result of us having more money, even though the mill rate has gone down.
Yeah, I see Ben's
So-
point. Although I do like the idea, because this money came in, of allocating it to the, to this year. That has a real value, I think, is in terms of clarity as well. Go ahead, Tony.
I have been trying to follow Ben's reasoning on this for a while, and I don't really understand. I don't see why you wouldn't do this year's budget, the reallocations into this year's budget before you tackle next year's budget. It doesn't make a great deal of sense to me. I understand the concern with putting more money into fund balance than we might want, but I don't see why if we did that, we can't pull it back out again. And there are some things that I really do think need to be added to this year's budget, and a collapsing road is certainly one of them.
Well, it's not in here though, Tony, so.
No, but we can add it. For example,
You mean to this?
we could add the 500,000 for Hunting Lodge Road to this list as number 18.
Yeah, I guess my thinking, Tony, as it relates to public works stuff specifically, is that is a new emergency. We obviously need to pay for that, but there's a budget, there's a next year budget connection to it, which is what is the capacity of the department? If the council said we would like to accelerate the process of road paving, what's the capacity of the department given this large new project, given the Cape Seal, et cetera? It's just, they're just separate things. So if we tonight say, here's $1 million, $500,000 for Cape Seal, $500,000 for culvert replacement, and then in 2 weeks we say, okay, we'd like to accelerate the road paving process this summer. Here, we'd like to allocate more money for that. Have we already told the Public Works Department, have we already encumbered their capacity to do work regardless of funding?
I think we've got a real difference here. Maintenance is one thing. Having a road closed is a totally separate thing. We have an obligation to keep our roads open. We don't have the same kind of obligation to avoid potholes. I mean, I realize we need to continue to improve road maintenance, and we're going to do that. But also, I really think we need to put some money aside to fix this. And if the department has to contract out the work to fix it, or to do some other part because they don't have the resources, then we'll just have to do that. Now we have 2 Zoom meetings going,
Yeah.
because the council meeting is actually up and functioning as well, and Ron is there and can hear us. So I lost my train of thought, but I do think the repair of a road that has had to be closed has got to take precedence over something else.
So, but that's not in here,
No, but we could add it.
right? So I guess, I mean, I would assume, since that, as the memo notes, that the various departments, put in these plans, that Public Works, in doing this, actually, maybe I shouldn't assume it because they may not have thought of it this way. Public Works has the capacity to do these projects as well as the ones proposed, for the next, for the upcoming fiscal year, or are they not considered that?
I'm sure John's considered. I think the lion's share of the projects you're seeing are things, work that would be contracted out for. And certainly there's a request in John's budget, as you all know, for additional drainage crew members. And certainly for the work that would happen after July 1st, that would be helpful. But I think John is of the belief that which he's envisioning tackling in early summer, we have the capacity to get started.
All
So
right,
in the interest of time, I
Yeah,
don't
we-
have an issue. I don't have an issue, I guess, I think I understand better what this is, and I don't have an issue saying, let's do these projects with the current year surplus today. I think my only issue I'm just anticipating that during the budget deliberations in 2 weeks, there's going to be a desire from the council to consider dipping into the remainder of the current year surplus to fund other capital expenses. And so if that's the case, as long as what you're saying is that that doesn't automatically go into fund balance until we sort of settle the books for next year. And so the council could do a similar process as in 2 weeks
It could.
with leftover dollars, and all it would impact is our snapshot percentage of fund balance.
That's accurate.
Then I'm comfortable making the recommendation tonight for these these projects.
and well, it does take $2.4 million out of what otherwise could be used elsewhere. Okay, I mean, I'm comfortable with these motions I mean, I guess the one way I look at it is this is all good news. None of this is a problem. We have extra money and, money from pilot, and we're figuring out the best way not only to spend it, but also how to account for it to the town and to the people of the town. So Ben, do you want to move to for these recommendations? Which are
Yeah, can I just sort of move acceptance of the motions in our packet?
Yes.
I don't have page numbers.
page 192, I think.
Page 192.
I'm sorry. Based off of this Hunting Lodge Road.
Well, that's
you
the
wanted to
next.
add-
No, I think we ought to wait for a recommendation from staff for how to fund that project. We don't have one
Okay.
right now. It doesn't sound like.
Perfect.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I'm clear.
Yeah, no, thank you, Charmaine.
I mean, we
that's-
better have one by April 25th. Right?
That's fine.
It's got to be in a budget somewhere, right?
We
But
can
I
mention.
think it's okay to not make that decision tonight until you've had a chance to recommend how to fund it.
That's
And
fine.
Charmaine, let's finish the vote. So, okay, Ben, that your motion is for to approve the motions, and I second, so Al's not on yet, motion's approved. And Charmaine, will you be available later tonight when we get to this item?
Oh, yes, I'll be calling in. Yes.
Okay, all right. We should adjourn in a minute. Is there anything else? Charmaine, anything?
Just a quick request on my part to notice the next finance committee as a hybrid so that we don't
Yes,
do this again.
yes. Yeah, thank you. Yes, let's do that. I mean, it's, particularly if I'm coming from Hartford or whatever, I need to get here by the 6th. So if we could make it a hybrid meeting rather than just virtual.
Oh, okay. See, and all right, that.
You can
I'm
still be
sorry.
virtual, Charmaine, but
Yeah,
that
yeah,
way it'll be up on the
No,
screen
I
behind
like the
Tony.
Mobi, but I needed it virtual for the auditor, so I didn't even realize that.
She could be
I need-
virtual
It'll
too,
still
just
be
like we've been
virtual.
doing council meetings. It would just make it up on the chamber screen rather than Peter having to zoom from his laptop at the council
Okay.
table.
all right. Anything
Move
else?
to adjourn.
All right, adjourned at 6:57. Thank you.
I'll be a little
Charmaine.
late.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.